Congressman Byrne, thank you so much for speaking with Voice of America.
Good to be here.
You just came back from South Korea and Japan. What did you see and learn regarding the North Korean nuclear crisis over there?
We went to the DMZ. We spoke with the Minister of Defense for South Korea. We spoke with our commander over there, who's also the commander of Korean troops. That's the way that works. We had some very intense discussions about where we are and where we're heading. Clearly, this is a very dangerous situation for the South Koreans. It's a very dangerous situation for the Japanese. But with the increase in missile technology that we're seeing from the North Koreans, it is posing a threat to United States interests. Guam, perhaps Hawaii, perhaps even the west coast of the United States. So the entire world is being brought into this as a result of the activities of the North Korean government. And it is just not acceptable to any of us that they have intercontinental ballistic technology or that they have nuclear missile technology, because the nuclear missiles could be on short-range missiles and certainly threaten South Korea and Japan.
Of course, this past week, North Korea just conducted another test, which is, analysts says, that is the most successful yet.
Yeah.
What do you think about this development, and what do you hope China would do regarding this crisis?
80% of the trade that North Korea has is with China. So China can have an enormous impact on the behavior of the North Korean government. And I would hope that we would continue our efforts, and I believe we will, to push China to do more there, because they're not doing nearly enough. Now, China has a big interest here. I know North Korea is right on their border, and they have some concerns about destabilization and refugee flows, etc. But they also have a huge interest in making sure that a North Korean misstep doesn't end up in our having a major war on the Asian continent. So they're a superpower now, and they're trying to exercise the prerogatives of a superpower. There's also responsibilities, and they have a responsibility to use that trade relationship to get the North Koreans to change their missile and their nuclear behavior.
It has been about 4 months since President Trump took office, and this week, of course, there's a string of controversies. And I know you held a lot of town hall meetings with your constituents. What is your constituent yourself think about President Trump's performance so far and about his policies?
President Trump won by a significant majority in my district, and I think with the people that voted for him last November, he retains popularity. I think he's still very popular. Now, the people that voted against him are much more vocal now, and so I'm hearing that as well. But if you ask about 60 to 65% of the people in my district, they voted for him and they're happy with his performance. So I don't see any real change in that. What I do see a change in is the willingness to be a lot more vocal, a lot more active by the people that voted against him.
What do you think about President Trump's handling of U.S.-China relations?
I've been very pleased. I'm pleased that he acted early. I'm pleased that he's engaging on an ongoing basis. I think he is right to see the China-America relationship as one in which, to some extent, we're competitors, but in some extent, we're also people that can work together to achieve mutually advantageous ends. And North Korea is a great example of that. But we got a lot more than just that. There are major concerns in the East China Sea and the South China Sea. There are major concerns about trade. And so I think the President will continue to work with the leadership in China to see what we can make in terms of progress there. But obviously, the thing at the very top of the list is what's happening in North Korea.
You mentioned about what's going on in the South China Sea and East China Sea. You are a member of the House Armed Service Committee Sea Power Subcommittee.
Right.
What do you think about China's behavior in the South China Sea, and do you think that the U.S. should do more to react to this behavior?
Well, we had a ruling by an international tribunal last summer that made it very clear that China does not have the right that they're trying to exercise in the South China Sea, not just in the islands, but in the whole maritime sphere there. So I think it's important for us, the United States, not only to recognize the ruling of that international tribunal, but for us to make sure that it's enforced. There's nobody else in the world that can do that but the United States. The other nations that are around the South China Sea, who all want to see that enforced, they can't do it on their own. So it takes the United States Navy, it takes the United States Air Force, and it takes our diplomatic power, our soft power, to go in there and make sure that everybody understands we have a ruling from an international tribunal. The Chinese cannot unilaterally try to go away from that. So we've got to continue to exert our power. I think we will. But as I said before, I think while we've got an adversarial relationship to some extent, we also have a cooperative relationship. And there's a way to use that in a nuanced way to get where we all need to go.
You are about to participate in the Shangri-La meeting. What is your expectation?
To some extent, I hope we do talk about the South China Sea issue. But the whole ASEAN region is maturing. I think that's the best way to say it. And that's good for the entire world that they're maturing. And so I want us to play a more proactive role with these nations as they continue to mature, not just in their defense operations, military operations, but also in trade and other things. And so I hope we come out of that as a tighter group, that we know what we want. We know when we have differences of opinion, as we do with China and the South China Sea, and as we do with North Korea. But I think by working together, I think that we can achieve things that are mutually advantageous. The more we see the growth in those countries in that region, the more we understand how important they are, not just to our military interests abroad, but to our economy at home. So I see that as a major opportunity for us to deepen and strengthen those relationships.
Lastly, is there any message you would like to send to our audience in China?
I think China is an extremely important country. Historically, that's been true. I am not bothered at all by the fact that China is a superpower and that they seek to use the prerogatives of a superpower. I think that's a good thing. But as I said before, China has responsibilities as well. And when you get to that level that China not only is where they are now, but where they aspire to be 20, 30 years from now, that responsibility grows. And so they have a responsibility on North Korea. They have a responsibility to follow international law as the International Tribunal has ruled there in the South China Sea. And if they will assume that responsibility along with the prerogatives, then I think the role that China can play, not just in that part of the world, but around the world, could be very important and very beneficial for everybody in the world. But they have to assume those responsibilities. And I haven't seen that yet. I hope that I do.
Thank you so much, Congressman Byrne, for
You're
your
welcome.
time.